Hello everyone and welcome back to Sophisticakes by Mary. For this video, I'm going to show you how I made this little girl silhouette with a balloon bouquet cake. These are the things that you will need for this cake. First of all, you need to decide what image you want to use as your silhouette. I went online and I googled little girl silhouette and I came up with these two different designs and I wasn't sure which one I was going to use. It all kind of depended on the size of the cake that I ended up doing. I also needed some styrofoam balls to use as the center of the balloons. I used these pre-made fondant colors. For the next step, you will need an X-Acto knife, some shortening of some kind. I went ahead and kneaded and softened up all of my colors. I have a styrofoam cake dummy to stick the balloons in when I'm done, and I got the toothpicks just in case I would need those too, but I did end up using mainly the skewers. You're going to want to use a ball of each color of the fondant, about the same size as the ball that you're covering. Make sure that you rub all the cracks out of it by rolling it in your hand and then making it into a cup shape. Place your styrofoam ball in the middle that I had covered in shortening to help it stick, and just kind of work with it and squeeze it together so that it works its way around the ball and it all meets together. Then you're going to want to roll it around in your hands for a while to get all the cracks out and to smooth it out. And if you have any little air bubbles that work their way out of the fondant, it's actually just a gap between the fondant and the ball. Just poke it with a knife or with a needle and work that air out. And just keep rubbing it around in your hands, rolling around in your hands until you get as close to a perfect ball as you can. And once you've got all of the balls covered, or even, well, you want to give it a little time to set up before you stick the skewer in so that you don't ruin the fondant that you already had smoothed out, but you will have to go back in and reshape it just a little bit. just from the pressure of sticking that skewer in. Now, if you did not want to use styrofoam balls, you don't have to. You could actually do cake pops in the different colors of candy melts. It would give you the same look, and it would be all 100% edible. The cake that I did was actually made out of styrofoam also. So nobody's going to eat it, so I didn't think it mattered. Either way is just fine. And then after you get it the way you want it, just stick it in the styrofoam. Leave it there to dry out a little bit and firm up until you're ready to put it in the cake. Now I'm going to make the silhouette now, and I'm just using black fondant, pre-colored fondant. Going to roll it out. Use some cornstarch to keep it from sticking to the roller and the mat. Now you could always use white fondant if you want to and add your color to it, but with these deeper colors, these more vibrant colors also, you have to add quite a bit of food coloring to them, and it tends to change the consistency of your fondant. It softens it up a lot. It makes it harder to use. And I'm going to brush the surface with some shortening. The shortening makes the template that you've cut out already stick to the fondant while you cut it out without it sticking permanently. If you were to use water or something like that, that would make it impossible basically to get it off neatly. The shortening makes it stick just good enough. When I'm cutting out these images, or any images for that matter, I like to do smaller sections at a time. I feel a little more in control that way. You can also let that black piece of fondant sit for a little while, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes, to firm up just a little bit so that it doesn't pull and stretch while you're cutting it out. That can make your image a little warped. And I rolled this out to maybe 1/8 of an inch thickness. See how easily that just pulled off? I wanted to add a little color, a little something to the silhouette to make it pop a little bit more and to tie it into the balloons. So I thought a good way to do that would be to make some little red bows for the hair and for the top of the skirt in the back. I think it added quite a bit to it. And I have this mold that has all kinds of different bows, and I had a hard time honestly picking which ones I wanted to use, but I think I like the way it turned out. So I used some more cornstarch in the mold before putting the fondant in it so that it comes out more easily. And I'm using my little tool here, my veiner tool, to press the fondant in and to clean off any excess. See, I had to try some more. Can't just leave well enough alone. Now, if you're worried about getting these out of here real easily, you can always pop it in the freezer for about 5-10 minutes just to firm up the fondant a little bit. But since I'm used to using these, I just went ahead and popped them out by pulling the mold away from the fondant on the sides, just kind of stretching it a little bit, and then bending the mold to force it out. See, I'm trying to figure out which ones I want to use. Now, for the cake itself, I used I will call it a double barrel sized 2 cake dummies. 6-inch cake dummies that I put on top of each other, and I just stuck them together with some hot glue. And I'm going to roll out the fondant. This is going to cover the top. I'm going to panel this. So roll it out, put it on the disc, and then I'm going to put some shortening on top of the pre-ganached cake dummies. I did the ganache to make sure that the sides were completely level and even and fill in any holes. I'm going to put the fondant on the top, smooth it out. Now put the ceramic disc back on top, flip the cake over, which, yes, you can do to a real cake. You just have to do it real quick. I'm going to flip it over. And this makes it easier to trim the excess off of the sides. Instead of trying to do it when it's draping down and touching the rest of the cake, just do it this way. And flip it back over. I'm going to measure the circumference, or the diameter, and the height, so that I have an idea how big I need to roll out this piece of fondant to panel the sides. It's a hefty amount. Make sure that that surface is covered in cornstarch, or you can use powdered sugar if you prefer. I just prefer the cornstarch. And roll it out to the size that you need. And I'm using this long straight ruler. Well, they're all straight. I'm using this long ruler to cut off the uneven edges on that one side. And then I'm measuring out the height and then the width that I need. So I'm just wrapping around what I need. Not as little excess as possible, because it just adds weight. It makes it harder to get a smooth finish. Leave yourself a little bit of extra width so that you can trim down and get the seam exactly right. And I'm using the long ruler again just to smooth out those sides, because I'm going to actually pick up the cake dummy and roll it instead of trying to wrap it around. It's just way easier. And I'm just putting a little bit of water on it to help it adhere. You can use corn syrup. You could use simple syrup. I'm just placing it on there, and make sure that it is reaching the top and the bottoms evenly. I don't know that I would do this with a real cake unless you were to chill it first, freeze it first. You might be able to do it that way. I'm going to use the ruler again to get a straight line cut. You cut it kind of like wallpaper. You layer the ends on top of each other, and then you do a line through both of them. Cut a line through both of them. Take the top piece off that you cut off, peel it away, and then take the piece from the inside out. And then you can get those two ends together, or the two ends of it together, and smooth it in. And here I'm trimming off the excess off the top. There wasn't much. I measured it just about right. And make sure it's all smooth and get all those air bubbles out, because there might be a few. Now, to get the silhouette to stick to the cake, I just used straight up piping gel. And yes, the top half of her body did pop off, but that's okay, because there's a bow there to cover that. Just stick it back on. And her hand did fall off too. Having problems. So I just put the stencil back up there and made sure I knew exactly where that hand was supposed to be attached. And there she is. And as for this last part, it's just me sticking the balls, the balloons, we'll call them the balloons, into the cake. And I like to start with a bigger one in the center and then fill in down from there. I do the same thing with my bouquets of flowers when I'm putting flowers on cakes. I tend to start with a larger one in the middle and go out from there. And this is a styrofoam, as I said, cake, so it would be a lot easier to stick the skewers into an actual cake. I did have to wrestle with it a little bit. And those half balls half balloons, I ended up putting on with just some piping gel. Excuse my big head. Kind of hard to do this without seeing the front and film it. You just have to eyeball this and just see how it's looking as you're going. You can take them out and move them around if you like. I just wouldn't do it a lot because you don't want to have a bunch of holes. But take your time. I did put some in the back also, so that from the back, you wouldn't see a bunch of sticks. And then for the strings of the balloon, I just rolled out some fondant real thin, and I'm attaching them to the cake with piping gel again. You could use an extruder, a clay extruder, to make these strings if you prefer. I probably would have done more strings if I had used an extruder. And don't forget to put some strings on the bottom, because you would have some strings hanging out from below your hand if you're holding a bouquet of balloons. And that's it. I hope you'd enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and leave me any questions or comments if you would like to. This one was a fun one to do, and I hope you enjoyed it. So we'll catch you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.